Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Atheist Experience. It's January 4th, 2009.
I can come to a serious point about soteriology. I think it's worth studying because early on in the Christian church, they did, I hate to reach into comics again, but they did a massive retcon specifically regarding soteriology and heaven when it became apparent to those of the earliest generations of recruits that the world hadn't ended, despite the fact that their believed Messiah had explicitly said that they and their immediate friends were the last generation on earth. You know, there are some here who will not taste of death before the kingdom of God comes in power, etc., etc. When that did not happen, and the world was still here, and then one by one the inner circle dies off, and the people they taught die off, and the third generation dies off, and on, and now you have a whole community teaching and proselytizing, yet the world is still here.
Yeah.
And they had to change their story. So what they did was they changed the idea that heaven was coming right around the corner and was going to change all of existence and end the world. And they flipped it. They turned it from horizontal to vertical and said, okay, well, heaven is here. Jesus did his thing. We're all saved. But the world's going to go on for a certain amount of time. We don't know how long. And eventually these two paths are going to cross, and there will be the eschaton. That's not what any of the Gospels say, and it's remarkable the degree to which this was modified, and it receives so little critical attention.
Yeah, and it was. And if we're talking about the same kind of pseudo incident of modification, it was Schofield and a few others who came up with this new end times eschatology that completely changed the face of Christianity.
In like, what, the late 1800s? Or was it early 1800s?
It may have actually been early 1900s that Schofield did it. I don't know. Do you happen to know offhand, George? Or?
I believe you're correct about that. I would have to hit the books.
That's the whole thing about the rapture, right? That so many people.
Yeah, originally Jesus.
It's a really recent invention that particular interpretation of the Bible and claim about what's about to happen.
That was the latest in a series of these revisions as it began to sink in, that we're still here, our kids are still here, our grandchildren are still here. The world has not ended.
Yeah.
Reality has not radically shifted. For crying out loud, the Romans are still in charge. What's going on? So the whole thing went from being an imminent earthly deliverance to being something far more cosmic, far more abstracted. And we're left with that today, and the whole history of that since then has been people explaining, any day now.
Yeah.
The bolder of them make, definable predictions, which are, of course, always false, and then they have to come up with excuses why that didn't work.
And there's a broader theme here that's echoed throughout many of the beliefs, and not just with regard to Christianity, but although this fits primarily. Not only did they have to change that, but they had to change a number of other things. Anytime that their religion came in conflict with science, where they just couldn't suppress the science anymore, then their religion became a little more fuzzy in that area. The God of the gaps, as we start closing gaps, there's no God there. Anytime that there was any kind of prophecy, or the end times type stuff that you're talking about, that clearly didn't come true, or it had gone on so long that it was starting to give people good reason to doubt, then the interpretation of it was changed so that we could continue. And what we end up with, and what we're moving towards, and what I'm going to go out on a limb and predict is that within, I won't predict the timeline, but I'll at least go a century or so that I'm dead and nobody can say ha ha, is that you get to a point where each of the grand world religions has been softened and fuzzied to the point where they're this nebulous, non-specific, almost the God is love theistic thing, and which I would still object to on the grounds it's not true, but I would at least be much more thrilled to be living around people who no longer felt that they had some God-given authority to impose their views upon others.
Well, you know why that is? Because it makes them skeptic-proof. The best. It's nice to have a moving target, but even better than that is an invisible target.
Yeah, I think it is important to hold religious people responsible for the previous beliefs of their own religion that have fallen into disfavor. This whole denying the Old Testament thing is just a very clear example of this. It's the same damn God. It's the same damn religion. No
it's
fair.
It's the same Yahweh. It's the exact same deity.
Yeah, it's just completely not fair and unacceptable for them to brush aside all the obvious nonsense that was believed by their own religion before.
Well, Jim, they have to keep the B-17 in the air. They have to get home.
Yeah, and to be fair, though, there are people who would say that it's not the same religion. Jews would say that, and Marcionite Christians
all right,
would.
but go back 100 years, right, and things that they were believing then.
Hey, Joe.